Kawhi Leonard was supposed to be celebrating his return to Toronto. Instead, just days before his expected extension talks with the Raptors, unexpected news has thrown the entire situation into question. So what exactly happened, and what could it mean for his future? Let me break it down. Let's get right into it. Kawhi Leonard is a Toronto Raptor again. On June 30th, the Clippers agreed to send him back to the team that once made him a champion. The Clippers agreed to trade Kawhi Leonard to the Raptors for Brandon Ingram, Grady Dick unprotected first-round picks in 2031 and 2033, a 2027 first-round pick swap, and 2 second-round picks. That's a massive haul going back to Los Angeles for one player. But Toronto didn't blink, because they weren't just trading for a rental. They were trading for a franchise cornerstone they planned to lock up long-term, and that's exactly where things get complicated. Almost the moment the trade cleared, the Raptors and Leonard moved straight into extension mode. A week after Kawhi Leonard was traded to the Toronto Raptors, he and the organization are set to talk about a contract extension, and he'll be doing it under new management, having hired a new agent. That new agent is Harrison Gaines of Slash Sports, and he's already been mobilized. Gaines will now handle negotiations for Leonard, replacing longtime representatives Mitch Frankel and Dennis Robertson, and is scheduled to meet with Raptors officials in Toronto in the coming days. On paper, the number is staggering. Leonard will be eligible for up to a projected $123.7 million over 2 years. He's got years of service in the league behind him, so he qualifies for a huge chunk of the cap. With more than 10 years of NBA experience, Leonard can earn up to 35% of the salary cap. But during the 6-month window after the trade, he's limited to a 20% raise on his previous salary, and then a 5% raise for the second year of the extension. Wait 6 months instead, and the ceiling goes even higher. If he were to wait 6 months, his maximum extension would be worth $126.7 million. So here's the picture. Massive trade completed, superstar in place, extension talks about to start, new agent hired, life-changing money on the table. That's the celebration story. That's the version everyone wanted to write. Except it isn't the whole story, because at the exact same time all of this is unfolding, there's a second storyline running underneath it, one that never actually went away. It is not a coincidence that this change comes after the NBA launched an investigation into Leonard's contract with the Clippers, and whether the team used former sponsor aspiration to circumvent the salary cap and get more money to Leonard. That investigation isn't some old closed chapter. It's still open, it's still active, and Leonard's own uncle, the man who has run his business affairs for years, is tangled up in it. Robertson, in particular, has been discussed in that investigation, and the off-the-books additions he allegedly asked teams for during Leonard's free agency are legendary. Think about the timing here. A guy switches his entire representation team right as he's about to sign the biggest deal of his career, and it happens in the same breath as a league investigation into how he got paid on his last deal. That's not a coincidence people are going to ignore. Players change agents all the time, and it goes by with little mention. But Kawhi Leonard changing agents for his next negotiations, pushing aside his longtime advisors, is worth noting. And this isn't some minor accusation buried in a report nobody read. The Clippers remain under NBA investigation regarding whether the team circumvented the salary cap through Leonard's endorsement arrangement with Aspiration, and Leonard and Robertson have both been interviewed by league investigators. Leonard himself sat down with league investigators. So did his uncle. That's not a rumor floating on social media. That's confirmed, sourced reporting. Now, the Raptors clearly aren't scared off. They still traded a haul for him. They're still opening extension talks within days of the deal closing. But the backdrop to all of it is a cloud that Commissioner Adam Silver himself has said needs to be resolved, and soon. So as exciting as the Kawhi is back in Toronto headline is, there's a far messier headline sitting right next to it. One about money that may not have been earned the way the league allows. One that follows him into every negotiation from here forward. So how did we get here? How does a guy who just delivered a career year, who's walking into a contract worth over $100 million, also happen to be walking into it with federal fraud sentencing hearings and league investigators in his rearview mirror? To understand the bad news hanging over Leonard's extension, you have to go back to where this all started, with a green banking company, a $60 million check, and a podcast that blew the lid off it. Before we dig into the mess, let's actually understand why Toronto mattered so much to Leonard in the first place. Because it explains why he was willing to torch his entire market for one destination. Go back to 2018. Leonard previously led the Raptors to the 2019 championship, earning Finals MVP honors after averaging 28.5 points per game against the Golden State Warriors, before leaving the Raptors in free agency that summer to sign with the Clippers. 1 season in Toronto, 1 championship, 1 Finals MVP trophy, then gone, off to Los Angeles to build something with Paul George and the Clippers. 7 years later, that Clippers experiment never delivered what it promised. And when free agency and trade season rolled around this year, Leonard made his priorities blunt. He didn't want a bidding war, he wanted one team. Leonard's stated desire to play for the Raptors again had a huge effect on his trade market, and while LA talked to several interested teams prior to the draft, his refusal to commit to a long-term deal with anyone other than Toronto prompted suitors such as the Timberwolves and Pistons to drop out. That's a player using leverage in reverse. Instead of letting teams compete for him, he shut the market down to just one option, forcing the Clippers' hand. And the motivation wasn't complicated. His desire to play for the Raptors again was motivated by his familiarity with the organization, his affection for Toronto, and his belief that the team can be a legitimate Eastern Conference contender. And he now expects to end his NBA career with the Raptors. Part of that familiarity comes down to one man: familiarity with Toronto's front office, now overseen by Executive Vice President Bobby Webster, factored into Leonard's openness to the move. Webster was there in 2019. He's still there now. Leonard trusts the people running the operation, and that trust apparently outweighed anything Minnesota or Detroit could offer in terms of raw opportunity. Toronto, for its part, wasn't just chasing a nostalgic reunion. The roster makes sense for him. The roster is now headlined by Leonard, Scotty Barnes, R.J. Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, Colin Murray-Boyles, and Jakob Poeltl. That's a young, athletic core that just needed a proven closer. Someone who's actually won a title and knows what a deep playoff run demands. Last season showed both the promise and the ceiling of what they have without him. The Raptors made it to the playoffs, but lost to the Cleveland Cavaliers in the first round. And on an individual level, Leonard isn't walking in as a name attached to old highlights. He's coming off arguably his best statistical year in a long time. Leonard is coming off an all-NBA season where he averaged a career-best 27.9 points per game, shooting 38.7% from beyond the arc. Those are numbers that make a max extension defensible on pure basketball terms alone. Add in a wing shooting near 39% from 3 at his usage level, and you understand why Toronto didn't hesitate to give up 2 Grady Dicks, 2 first-rounders, and a swap to get it done. He's an excellent fit for Toronto and can help push the team near the top of the East, but only if he's healthy. That if healthy qualifier is doing a lot of work, and it's not an afterthought. While he played 65 games last season, in his 7 seasons in Los Angeles, he reached that number twice. In 7 years. That's the swirling question mark that will follow every extension conversation. Not whether Leonard can still play like an all-NBA wing, but whether his body will let him do it consistently enough to justify the money. His Clippers tenure, in hindsight, reads like a cautionary tale wrapped around brilliance. In the end, Leonard's time with the Clippers will be remembered for his dramatic arrival, a parade of injuries, a lack of playoff success, and a bizarre investigation. Having missed the entire 2021-22 season with a torn ACL, played in 331 of a possible 554 regular season games, won 3 playoff series and never appeared in a game beyond the second round. 7 years a superstar and never passed the second round. That's the return Los Angeles got for pairing him with George. There was also the load management saga that never fully died down. Back in the early Clippers years, a game against Milwaukee turned into a national story, when Coach Doc Rivers described Leonard as feeling fine before a scratched appearance. Prior to that game, then Clippers coach Doc Rivers said Leonard felt great, and there was no reason for long-term concern, but the league later fined the Clippers $50,000 due to Rivers making comments that were inconsistent with Leonard's health. The league went as far as putting out its own statement, distinguishing what the medical staff had determined from what the coach had said publicly, essentially confirming that Leonard genuinely wasn't healthy enough to play back-to-backs at the time. So this is a player walking into Toronto with 2 competing realities. On one hand, a peak offensive season, a franchise that wants him, and a market he chose himself. On the other, a durability record that makes every negotiating team nervous. And now, layered on top of both of those things, a league investigation that hasn't gone away just because he changed zip codes. That investigation didn't start in Toronto, it started in Los Angeles, with a sponsorship deal that raised eyebrows the moment reporters started pulling the thread. To understand the bad news chasing Leonard into these extension talks, you have to go back to a green banking startup most casual fans had never heard of before all this, a company called Aspiration. Here's how it started. In September 2021, the Clippers signed a huge marketing deal with the company. In September 2021, the Clippers signed a $300 million endorsement deal with Aspiration, making the company the first founding partner of the Intuit Dome, the Clippers' new arena, which opened in 2024. That's a franchise betting big on a small sustainability-focused bank. But there was more going on behind that deal than just an arena sponsorship. Before the team-level deal was even signed, Clippers owner Steve Ballmer had put his own money into the company personally. The NBA launched its investigation in September, following a series of podcasts from former ESPN contributor Pablo Torre, who cited internal documents that showed Ballmer invested $50 million in Aspiration through his personal LLC in September 2021. That's an owner personally funding a company that would then turn around and sign a marketing deal with his own team. And just months later, Aspiration reached even deeper into the roster. That month, the Clippers signed a $300 million deal with Aspiration, making the company the first founding partner of the Intuit Dome. And 6 months later, Aspiration signed its $28 million endorsement deal with Leonard. Here's where things get suspicious. Endorsement deals are supposed to be based on a player's actual marketing value, what a company gets in return for their money in terms of appearances, ads, social content, brand association. But according to Torre's reporting, that's not what Leonard was providing for his $28 million. Torre reported that Leonard received millions of dollars from this company without ever fulfilling the sponsorship deal's requirements. No visible campaign, no noticeable ad rollout, just money moving, allegedly, from a company Ballmer had personally funded to a player Ballmer needed to keep happy under a hard salary cap. Torre didn't just speculate about this. He had someone on the inside. An unnamed employee who purportedly worked for the banking company told Torre that Leonard's sponsorship deal was to circumvent the salary cap. That's about as direct an accusation as you can get. A person who worked at the company itself saying on record that the entire arrangement existed to get around a rule every other team in the league has to follow. The NBA couldn't ignore that. The league launched its investigation into alleged salary cap circumvention last September, and it wasn't a quiet internal review. They brought in outside lawyers. Kawhi Leonard and Dennis Robertson, the Clippers star's uncle and advisor, have been interviewed by investigators from Wachtell, Lipton, Rose & Katz, hired by the league last September, to investigate allegations that Ballmer invested $50 million in Aspiration to circumvent the salary cap and direct more money to Leonard. That's a top-tier law firm brought in specifically to dig through this, and Leonard himself had to sit down and answer their questions. Ballmer's side of the story has been consistent from the start. He says he simply liked the company and had no idea what happened after his introduction turned into a player contract. Though Ballmer has said he introduced Leonard to Aspiration, he told ESPN's Ramona Shelburne in September that he had no knowledge of the player's deal and denied he directed the company to strike one. Leonard's camp has pushed the same denial. A source close to Leonard's camp also denied the allegations to ESPN, saying the Clippers weren't involved with Leonard's deal beyond the 2021 introduction. But then Aspiration itself collapsed, and not in some quiet business-as-usual way. Aspiration went bankrupt in 2025, and Sandberg was sentenced to 14 years in federal prison earlier this month. The man who co-founded the very company at the center of this entire investigation is now a convicted felon, sentenced for defrauding investors out of hundreds of millions of dollars. Joseph Sandberg awaited sentencing from a federal judge after pleading guilty to 2 counts of wire fraud for his role in a scheme that allegedly defrauded investors of $248 million. That changes the entire complexion of the story. This isn't just a suspicious marketing deal anymore. It's a suspicious marketing deal tied to a company whose own founder is now behind bars for fraud. And once Sandberg was in that position staring down a federal judge, he had every incentive in the world to cooperate with anyone investigating the people around him, including the NBA. That cooperation didn't come cheap for the league in terms of time, but it did come. David Anders, the attorney leading the NBA's investigation, interviewed Sandberg twice and provided documents that Sandberg described as relevant to our investigation, according to a letter sent straight to the federal judge overseeing his fraud case. That's a co-founder already convicted, handing over information about the very deal the league has been trying to untangle for months. Ballmer's team, understandably, wants distance from all of it. His attorneys have gone out of their way to paint him as another victim of Sandberg's fraud, rather than a co-conspirator in any cap circumvention. Sandberg flagrantly defrauded Mr. Ballmer, and his actions have significantly damaged Mr. Ballmer's reputation. Ballmer's attorney wrote, "They've leaned hard into the idea that Ballmer was duped, not scheming. Mr. Ballmer invested a total of $60 million in Aspiration because he believed in Aspiration's stated environmental mission, and because he believed Joe Sandberg's representations about the financial bona fides of the company, and that Sandberg's representations turned out to be lies, and what he promised by way of an environmental mission turned out to be nothing more than a lure to bilk Mr. Ballmer and others. But there's a problem with that defense, and it's not a small one. Even if Ballmer was genuinely fooled by Sandberg on the investment side, that doesn't automatically explain away why a $28 million endorsement deal landed on Leonard's desk with seemingly no actual marketing work attached to it. Those are two separate questions, and the league's investigators know it. This is also not Leonard's first brush with this exact kind of scrutiny. His 2019 free agency carried its own version of these allegations, and that history is part of why nobody in the league is treating this new investigation as some throwaway inquiry. Here's something that makes this whole situation land differently. This isn't the first time Kawhi Leonard's inner circle has been accused of pushing the boundaries of what's allowed under the league's rules. And the man at the center of it both times is the same person, his uncle, Dennis Robertson. Back in 2019, when Leonard was a free agent deciding between the Lakers, Clippers, Raptors, and others, Robertson reportedly went looking for extras that had nothing to do with a standard player contract. The forward's uncle and advisor, Dennis Robertson, was investigated by the league for reportedly asking teams, including the Raptors, for impermissible benefits. During his 2019 free agency, including Leonard having minority ownership of the team, a private jet available at all times, and a guaranteed amount of endorsement money. Read that list again: ownership stake, a private jet on call, guaranteed endorsement cash. None of that is how NBA free agency is supposed to work. Teams aren't allowed to offer perks outside the collective bargaining agreement. Full stop. And yet, according to reporting, that's exactly what was being floated on Leonard's behalf to multiple teams, including the very team he's now signing an extension with. That first investigation didn't result in punishment. The 2019 investigation found no validity to the claims against Robertson, but his name has been front and center in the Aspiration probe. No proof, no penalty. Case closed at the time. But now, 6 years later, his name is right back in the middle of a nearly identical kind of accusation, this time tied to actual money that allegedly moved through a real company, with a former employee willing to say on record what it was for. And here's the twist that makes this genuinely uncomfortable for Toronto. The same organization that once had Robertson allegedly asking them for illegal perks is the organization now welcoming Leonard back with open arms, giving up a franchise player's worth of draft capital to get him, and opening extension talks within days. The Raptors appear ready to forgive Uncle Dennis and welcome Leonard back to Toronto in their quest for a second championship. That's a franchise choosing to look past history because the on-court fit is that valuable to them. But looking past it doesn't make the current investigation disappear. And this one carries actual teeth if the league decides it wants to use them. Let's talk about what's really on the line here, because this isn't a symbolic slap on the wrist. We're discussing the collective bargaining agreement spells out real consequences for teams caught circumventing the cap. Under the NBA's 2023 collective bargaining agreement, teams can be punished for circumventing the salary cap, with penalties including fines up to $7.5 million, direct forfeiture of draft picks, voiding any player contract, and a suspension of up to a year for any team personnel found to have engaged in such a violation. Voiding a player contract, read that again. If the league determined the Clippers used Aspiration specifically to get Leonard extra money outside his real contract, there's a mechanism that lets them nullify the deal entirely. That's the kind of outcome that would have sent shockwaves through the league, and it's part of why every insider covering this story has been watching the investigation as closely as any trade rumor. Front Office Sports put it plainly when discussing the timing of Leonard's trade relative to the investigation. If the Clippers are found to have broken the collective bargaining agreement, they could be susceptible to fines and/or a loss of draft picks, with Leonard's contract also having the potential to be voided, though the trade could potentially indicate that both teams received assurance from the league that the latter would not occur. That last part is worth sitting with. If Toronto is willing to give up 2 first-round picks, a pick swap, and multiple players for a guy whose contract theoretically could have been voided by the league, that suggests somebody in that front office got comfortable enough with the direction of the investigation to pull the trigger anyway. Nobody trades that much draft capital for a player with a contract hanging over federal proceedings, unless they believe the risk of it evaporating is low. Still, low risk isn't the same as no risk, and the league has been careful never to fully close the door on the possibility. Commissioner Adam Silver has repeatedly acknowledged the investigation is dragging on, longer than anyone wanted, without giving a hard deadline. Before the finals began, he made it clear the process was close to done but not finished. Before Game 1 of the NBA Finals, Silver said the investigation was far along and that the league is close to the point now where I think we need to wrap this up, though he did not specify a timeline, saying the Clippers need to understand what situation they are going to be operating under, and so do the other 29 teams. All 29 other teams. Not just the Clippers, not just Leonard. Silver's own words there tell you this investigation is bigger than one contract. It's about whether every franchise in the league needs to worry about a rival using a sponsorship the same way. That's why the league has taken this long, and why it's not going to just quietly fade away. Because Leonard changed teams. There's also a financial layer to this that hasn't gotten as much attention as it deserves. Even setting aside any circumvention finding, the Clippers were already fined once during this saga for public comments that didn't match Leonard's actual medical status. A $50,000 penalty that, while small compared to what a circumvention ruling could bring, shows the league has been willing to act on smaller pieces of this story already. If they were comfortable fining the team over a coaching comment, there's little reason to think they'll go soft if the bigger allegation about the aspiration deal is substantiated. And that's the environment Leonard is walking his new extension into. Not a clean slate, not a fresh contract untouched by controversy. An extension being negotiated while the very people investigating his last one haven't finished their work, and while his own uncle's name keeps surfacing every time the topic comes up. So where does all of this leave Leonard as he sits down to actually hammer out numbers with Toronto? The most immediate, visible change is the one we opened with. He's not doing this with the people who've represented him for years. Gaines has served as Leonard's business attorney during the past year, and hiring a new agent represents a significant change for Leonard, who was previously represented by Mitch Frankel, along with Leonard's uncle and business advisor, Dennis Robertson. Frankel wasn't some minor figure in Leonard's career either. He's the one who got the last deal done. Frankel handled the lead role in all of Leonard's dealings with the Clippers, including a 3-year extension in 2024. That's the guy who negotiated Leonard's most recent Clippers contract, now suddenly out of the picture right as a fresh, even bigger deal is on the table. And Robertson, the uncle who's been by his side handling deals since the beginning, the same uncle whose name keeps surfacing in 2 separate league investigations, is stepping back too, at least publicly, from lead negotiating duties. Gaines is a newer face in this specific arena. Gaines doesn't currently represent any other NBA players, but formerly represented Lonzo Ball and LaMelo Ball. He's not a total rookie to the agent business, but he's also not walking in with a roster of current NBA clients behind him. What he does have is proximity. He's already spent real time inside. Leonard's business operations Gaines has worked closely with Leonard over the past year as his business attorney. Reading between the lines here isn't hard. Bringing in someone with legal training, someone who understands contracts and compliance at a granular level, right as the league is scrutinizing exactly how Leonard's last deal was structured. That's not a random personnel change. That's a strategic one. A guy whose background is in the legal side of business deals is arguably exactly who you'd want handling a negotiation that's happening under this level of league attention. Practically, the actual talks are already in motion. Kawhi Leonard has brought in new representation as he and the Toronto Raptors prepare to open contract extension discussions. with Gaines scheduled to meet with Raptors officials in Toronto in the coming days. This isn't some distant, maybe next off-season conversation. It's imminent. Both sides want it locked up, and locked up fast. The number, again, sits around that $123.7 million mark. Over 2 years if they move immediately, or a bit higher, if Leonard's side decides patience pays off. Either way, we're talking about a deal that, combined with his current $50.3 million salary this season, could see him earning well over $170 million across the next 3 years combined. For a 35-year-old, that's likely the last major payday of his career, and both sides know it. The Raptors clearly believe the basketball case outweighs the risk. They're getting a proven Finals MVP, a career-year performer, and a locker-room presence who chose them specifically over multiple other suitors. The front office, led by the same Bobby Webster who was there for the 2019 title run, appears fully committed to writing the check regardless of what's still unresolved in the league office. But here's what doesn't go away. Just because ink dries on a new deal, the investigation isn't tied to Leonard's next contract. It's tied to his last one. Even if Toronto and Leonard finalize an extension tomorrow, the Wachtell-Lipton lawyers are still combing through what happened with Aspiration, still working off documents from a convicted fraudster, still deciding whether the Clippers, not the banner-hanging Raptors, broke league rules to pay him. That means Leonard could realistically be wearing a Raptors jersey, freshly extended, while the league hands down findings about money he received as a Clipper. If those findings are severe enough, there's still a scenario, however unlikely, given the trade's execution, where retroactive penalties land on the franchise that employed him at the time, not the one he's playing for now. The uncertainty doesn't disappear with a change of address. It just changes. Which fan base is watching nervously? For Ballmer, the stakes remain deeply personal. He's spent months trying to separate his own conduct from Sandberg's fraud, all while Sandberg sits in federal custody and cooperates with the very investigators trying to determine what Ballmer did or didn't know. That story isn't over just because the player at the center of it has moved on to a new team. For Robertson, the uncle who shaped nearly every major business decision in Leonard's career, this represents something close to a professional sidelining, stepping back from lead negotiations right as the stakes get highest with his name, still tied to 2 separate league inquiries spanning 6 years. Whether that's a temporary strategic move or a permanent shift in how Leonard's business gets handled going forward is still an open question. And for Leonard himself, the picture is almost split in two. On the court, he's arguably playing the best basketball of his career, wanted by exactly the franchise he wanted, about to sign for life-changing money, with a fresh voice handling the paperwork. Off the court, he's still tied to a federal fraud case through a bankrupt company, still connected to a league investigation that Commissioner Silver has publicly admitted has dragged on longer than anyone hoped, and still carrying the weight of a family member's business decisions that have followed him across 2 separate free agency periods. The Raptors got their guy back. The extension is close. The money is basically already agreed upon in spirit, waiting on paperwork and a 6-month clock. But the investigation that started with a podcast, a green bank, and a $50 million personal check from an NBA owner hasn't been closed out. It's still sitting there, unresolved, trailing Leonard into the very city where he once won everything, and where he now hopes to finish exactly what he started 7 years ago. Sources: Raptors nearing deal to acquire Leonard from Clippers, ESPN. Kawhi Leonard changes agent, extension talks to begin soon. Hoops rumors: Kawhi Leonard reportedly hires new agent for extension negotiations with Raptors. NBC Sports: Kawhi Leonard hires Harrison Gaines as new agent ahead of extension talks with Raptors. Real GM: Raptors Kawhi Leonard makes bombshell change before contract extension negotiations. Yahoo Sports Clutch Points. NBA Free Agency News 2026 Live Updates. Yahoo Sports. Kawhi Leonard investigation. Clippers star interviewed by NBA and Aspiration Probe. CBS Sports. Sources: NBA interviews Leonard. Advisor in Aspiration case. ESPN. Kawhi Leonard. Clippers receive update on Aspiration investigation.